All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Okay, welcome to day 3 of our August council meeting. We're going to go right into business session. We're going to start with our committee reports. I apologize. I actually didn't look to make sure that Mike was online, but as we mentioned earlier in the week, Paul is enjoying a well-deserved break. We have our vice chair of the SSC, Mike Wilberg. Mike, hopefully you're with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am.
Great. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm not sure who's controlling it, but if someone could please pull up my presentation for me. Excellent. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the SSC met in July to do several things. The first one we've already talked about, and that's recommending new ABCs as part of the spec setting process for ocean quahog and butterfish. The important part of this is due to the lack of updated assessments. We adopted a new approach for setting ABCs that was based on the previously specified ABCs. This has engendered a lot of discussion within the SSC over the last, I think we started talking about it even at the end of last year. And while we think the approach we've adopted is appropriate given our current information, we suspect it's not optimal. And so we think with more research and investigation, we would be able to do a better job than what we're currently doing. And so that's what we would really like to do, is to conduct a study to both evaluate the performance of the adopted method we have, as well as to look at alternatives. And so this would take the form of a management strategy evaluation. And so it's a computer simulation based exercise. We typically use that for this sort of question because in that case, we actually can know what the truth is, and we can compare how well our approach works compared to the truth. And so that's really useful at this point. And so it's a fairly heavy technical lift to do this sort of study, and we have yet to identify staffing or funding to be able to conduct it. And so we're currently in that phase of trying to figure out how we need to do it and even whether we need to do it. The main question here is whether we might relatively quickly go back to our previous assessment schedule as well as survey schedule. And if that all went back to the way it was, I think the thoughts of the SSC is that we wouldn't need to do this sort of study because this is really specifically around these approaches we're trying to develop for setting ABCs in the absence of updated stock assessments. Next slide, please. We also reviewed the previous ABC recommendations for Atlantic surf clam, summer flounder, black sea bass, scup, bluefish, and chub mackerel. We didn't make any changes to those. We didn't see any indications in the data that we were provided that suggested that changes were needed. And so those all stayed the same. But again, this is our standard process for reviewing ABCs that we make each year after we've made them. So next slide, please. This is just to give you a heads up. We conducted an evaluation of the scup gear restricted area study that was recently completed. And you'll hear more about this, I believe, at the October council meeting. So I'm going to leave this just telling you we did it for now, and you'll get the details of that at the next meeting when you talk more about the scup GRAs. And so the other big thing that we did was at our May SSC meeting, we got the report of the state of the ecosystem. And as part of that report, the center gave us a number of questions that they were interested in ways that the report might be able to be improved, or whether we thought that the way they had made some changes to the report were useful. And so we provided feedback on that. And so for the first question they asked us was relative to their management objectives and performance metrics, and whether those are clear and whether the metrics are appropriate and useful. And so we thought that they were useful and that they were well described. The thing that we suggested would be a future improvement to look at was to try to look at trade-offs that happen between the different metrics. And so in a lot of cases, when we're looking at metrics, you don't get to have everything you want. In some cases, you can only have one thing if something else is low, and vice versa. And so part of the exploration is to look for things like that and try and understand what the potential trade-offs are in the ecosystem. Next, please. And so another new part of the State of the Ecosystem report was to try and characterize stability of the ecosystem as well as of fishery indicators. And we were asked whether that is useful and whether we have suggestions for making it better. And so we thought that some discussion and indication in the State of the Ecosystem report of stability is useful, but that there's it's a different thing to say that the management is stable versus the ecosystem is stable. And so we think it's important to keep those two things, we shouldn't be mixing those two things together necessarily. We should be keeping them separate. And also, we just want to highlight that we think the evaluation of trade-offs is probably more important than looking at stability. Next, please. And so the next part is the State of the Ecosystem report has started to try to include forecasts of the ecosystem, and asked whether these would be useful for the council, and are there other things that we would like to see forecasted. And so we thought that the current way they're presented in the State of the Ecosystem is useful, and that we probably want to focus on some of the biological and fishery ones. A lot of the forecasts right now are mainly the oceanographic forecasts, and that this should hopefully be an activity with the council to try and identify which metrics to forecast might be the most useful and informative. So next, please. And then this is a perennial thing of how should we try to convey the uncertainty along with these forecasts. And we agree that it needs to be communicated clearly and quantified, and that this is a high priority to be able to do. It's also, as as any of you or all of you know, quantifying uncertainty is difficult. So next, please. So in other business, the SSC participated in the review of the Fisheries Integrated Modeling System. If you're not familiar with this, this is a new NOAA-wide stock assessment modeling platform that is being developed. It's intended partially to replace stock synthesis, which is phasing out. That's the main stock assessment program that's used on the west coast of the US, as well as in some other regions like the Gulf. But it's intended to be able to do everything that WAM does as well. And there's will be a NOAA decision, but it's intended to be able to be used nationwide. And so we might be seeing assessments in the future that are using FIMS instead of WAM. I'm not exactly sure what the uptake of that will be. And like I said, a lot of that will be up to the Northeast Science Center as to how they decide to progress on stock assessment model development. We also participated in a New England Council sponsored workshop on dynamic reference points. So the New England Council has tasked their SSC with trying to develop reference points that are more responsive to ecosystem change, particularly for considering some of their stocks that are under rebuilding plans. And so that is something that we participated in. Given that the Northeast Center supplies the science to both New England and to the Mid-Atlantic, we might see some similar advice in the future coming out for Mid-Atlantic stocks. But right now, there's nothing that's decided yet in this. I would characterize this as still being in the relatively early phases of this. Our next SSC meeting will be September 9th and 10th in Philadelphia. And I just want to really extend our thanks to Mark Holliday for his many years of service on the SSC. I think Mark had been our longest standing SSC member, and it's sad to see him go, and we wish him well. So with that, I think I'll be happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks so much, Mike. Any questions for Mike? Not seeing any, Mike. I think you're off the hook. I just would also like to extend our thanks to Mark for all his contributions over the years, and just personally, Mike, just say appreciate the SSC working on with the New England Council on the dynamic reference points. So thanks, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up, we're going to go to the NTAP report. So Hannah, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple slides for you all. And I'll breeze through it pretty quickly since Dr. Catherine Ford gave an excellent presentation to you all earlier this week that touched on some of NTAP's recent events. But just so everyone knows, we had an NTAP meeting last month, July 9th. The meeting was in New Bedford, Massachusetts. We've hosted the meeting there a couple times now, and it seems to be working well. The NTAP working group also continues to meet on a monthly, sometimes 2 times a month basis. And we're really focusing on the planning for phase 2 of that Ribbits project. And we've been meeting since December of last year. So just specific to the July 9th meeting, we got our typical center updates and updates on the different trawl surveys and surveys that the federal staff works on. We also got the results of phase 1 of that Ribbits pilot project. And then we also went through pretty much the whole second half of the meeting, Ribbits phase 2, focusing on the working group recommendations, since they have come up with a suite of recommendations. And then during this meeting, we also got the chance to tour Radars, which is a trawl manufacturer up in New Bedford. So it was cool to see some of those nets. So just to highlight a couple things on this slide, as I mentioned, the NTAP got a survey or a center update. You heard about the bottom trawl efforts in 2026, so I won't reinforce those. We also got the centers working on a Pisces Bigelow transition, and they shared a series of gear performance metrics comparing the spring 2025 survey on the Bigelow to the spring 2026 survey on the Pisces. So if folks are interested in seeing those side-by-side comparisons, they are in that presentation on the NTAP website, or that meeting page starting on slide 16. And the comparative study is underway, so it was cool to see a snapshot of that. The spring 2026 trawl surveys for NEMAP were also a success. I think Catherine went over that as well. All of them were conducted, and 2 out of 3 of them completed 100% of their stations. As I mentioned, we also got a Rivet Phase 1 update. That is complete, very exciting. I'm not going to reiterate the objectives or anything like that, but as a reminder, they sampled within the wind farm up in Vineyard Wind area, as well as several offshore areas, and the goal was really to test the gear performance both in offshore as well as to make sure that they could tow inside the wind farm. And the NTEP update really focused on lessons learned and recommendations for future planning. Dr. Gartland gave that presentation, did an excellent job. And so folks are interested in seeing kind of the lessons learned and the suite of recommendations for phase 2 and future planning, please visit that presentation posted here. For phase 2, the NTAP update really focused on the goals and objectives as well as the breakdown of the working group recommendations. There is a suite of recommendations that this working group has been really working hard to come up with, anywhere from gear recommendations to spatial scope, things like that. And just a reminder, the goal of phase 2 is really to inform the full scale survey, really focusing on operational feasibility across 2 vessels in a larger geographical area. So taking what we did in phase 1 and expanding it to more vessels in a larger footprint. There's a number of objectives for phase 2, and I think Catherine went over these in detail, so I will save the time here. And just to kind of note the work that the NTAP working group has been working through, as I mentioned, we've been meeting since December of 2025. This is the list of meetings. In blue is all the meetings that we've held, as well as those topics that we've discussed for. Sometimes the meetings have stretched across 4 hours, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes a single hour. So they are hard at work trying to get this going. And the plan for right now, once ASMFC, so the center was appropriated $3 million specific to phase 2, and that's getting transferred over to ASMFC, and they will be the ones coordinating phase 2. Once they get the money, we plan on having that RFP hit the street and probably give folks about 8 weeks to apply to it. So just to give you a snapshot of the timeline, this is highly dependent on a number of variables, but this is kind of our plan for phase 2 moving forward. So issue the RFP hopefully in September, then late October and November, review those proposals and select a team. It'll likely be 2 teams this time, since there are 2 vessels probably participating, or we hope will be participating. And then that contract will occur in December. And then the hopes is that the Science Center will host a workshop with fishermen and participants, just to kind of get everyone on the same page, understand what's needed on the vessel and things like that. And then fall 2027 is when we aim to get phase 2 on the water. And then in 2028, we'll do some long-term planning and look at those results from phase 2, and hopefully some final reporting that will inform the long-term study or survey, excuse me. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we got a tour of radars. I'm not sure how to exactly say it, but it was a really cool experience for the group. We got to see a lot of these really large nets in person, some of the nets that a lot of commercial fishermen use, as well as nets that are used on the survey. We got to see a cookie sweep and all the various kinds of cookie sweeps. I didn't actually realize there were more than one option for a cookie sweep, but you could basically design it to look like whatever you want. So that was kind of fun and interesting to learn. But it was a really cool experience, and big shout out to Tor for letting us come and bother him for a couple hours. So just for future meetings, the NTAP working group will continue to meet just to kind of keep the momentum going and the conversation at the forefront of our minds. So, but we're going to move to monthly meetings. So this is the list of our planned monthly meetings. So far, they might change by a day or so, depending on schedules. And then our next full NTAP meeting will hopefully be in winter 2027. It might have to be a virtual meeting because we don't currently have any additional NTAP funds to host a in-person meeting, but to be determined on that. And then just a big shout out to Catherine Ford and Anna Mercer and Jason Morrison from the Science Center that have really kind of kept these NTAP conversations going and kept us on track. And then our co-chairs, Dan Salerno from the New England Council and Bobby Rule is our Mid-Atlantic co-chair. So big thanks to Bobby for all that he does. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Thanks to that. It's a lot of folks and a lot of work still going on. So much appreciated. Do we have any questions on the NTAP report? Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a great report. Just in curiosity, looking logistics. So yeah, December 17th down for a meeting. Is that going to be co-located with the Mid-Atlantic Council meeting?
No, sorry, that's a typo. It's going to be Friday, December 18th. Also, I recently learned that the September New England Commission or Council meeting is that week in September, so that one will also be a Friday. So we'll meet twice on a Friday and twice on a Thursday. I'm making it real interesting for you guys.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Thanks again. Okay, so we're going to move on. And actually, I meant to mention this at the end of the SSC report when we were thanking Mark Holliday. But I'm going to turn it over to Chris. But before he goes into the executive director's report, we're going to get an executive committee summary, which includes a recommendation for a new SSC member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. The executive committee met this week, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. We had a good conversation. We were there for one reason, and that is to consider a vacancy on the SSC due to the resignation of Dr. Mark Holliday. So that was, as Mike Wilberg referenced, Mark was our longest serving SSC member, and he decided to retire from the SSC. His retirement from the SSC occurred in year 2 of a 3-year term. So that 3-year term is up February of 2028. Excuse me. Mark was one of 4 members on the SSC that had socioeconomic expertise. He was more on the socio side, but certainly also had the economic background. Our SOPs, our policies and procedures, allow the council to fill a midterm vacancy with an appointment to serve out the remainder of the term. In June, this council agreed to fill that vacancy and to prioritize filling it with another economist or social scientist, just to maintain that seat on the SSC. That new member would begin September 1 and serve out the remainder of Mark's current 3-year term, which expires in February of 28. Once that term expires, then that individual, of course, could apply again to serve on the SSC for another 3-year term, just like we do with the other SSC members. Next. So we solicited for new members. We sent that out in June and left it, put it out on the street for a month. We had 3 applications in response. The solicitation noticed that it was open to anyone that met our membership requirements. But we did note that we were looking for, in terms of priority, someone with the economic and social sciences background. We received, like I said, 3 applications. There's a range of backgrounds, interest, and expertise associated with those 3 individuals. Some were from academic institutions, others federal government. Next. Here's the summary. So these are the 3 folks that sent in applications, all excellent scientists. First one, many of the folks around the table know, is Dr. Steve Cadron. He's affiliated with the University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth. He is, again, folks know him, he's an excellent stock assessment scientist, has background in stock assessment modeling and methods, stock structure identification, He's been involved in offshore wind issues and also cooperative research issues. The other two are actual social scientists. So the first is Matt Cutler, associated with the Northeast Fishery Science Center Social Sciences branch. He's been involved with issues, projects involving social impacts of fisheries, management policies, fishing communities analysis, commercial fleet dynamics. The third individual on the list is someone from the University of Maine, Dr. Teresa Johnson. She's associated with the School of Marine Sciences. She's been with the University of Maine for a little while. She's an interdisciplinary social scientist involved in anthropology issues, marine policy, human ecology, community profiles, as well as social impact assessments. So we had an excellent conversation about these three individuals at our closed meeting, and reviewed the applications, and the committee recommended the appointment of Dr. Teresa Johnson to serve the remainder of the 3-year term. So that, if in fact approved by the council, Dr. Johnson would begin her term with the SSC on September 1, and again, that would expire February 28th, 2028. Next. Here's a draft council motion. We do need a motion from the council. Again, the way it works is basically the executive committee meets to develop a recommendation for the council, but it's really up to the council to decide who's going to serve on the SSC. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll open up for questions.
Let's start with questions. Are there any questions on the report? Not seeing any, as Chris mentioned, we want to move this through a motion. Joe Grist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to appoint Dr. Johnson to the SSC to serve the remainder of the vacant 3-year term, effective September 1st, 2026, and expiring on February 28th, 2028.
Thank you, Joe. Second by Jim Gilmore. As Chris mentioned, we did have a very thorough discussion since we had such good candidates. So I'll just ask, is there any further discussion on the recommendation? We got it covered. Jim and Joe. Okay. Anyone else? Any other council members other than XCOM? Was there anyone that would like to comment on the nomination? Okay. Not seeing any hands. Any objection to the motion? Great. Not seeing any, then Chris will consider that approved. And I apologize. I had a little sidebar. I missed in your explanation of filling out this term. Did we explain that after that individuals would apply again?
I said it
Yes.
quickly, but
Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you. So we'll reach out to Dr. Johnson. It's very exciting to have. A few years back, we put in a commitment to kind of beef up our socioeconomic and economic portion of the SSC. Very important for the work we do. So thank you to everybody there. And Chris, if you want to, when you're ready to get into the executive director's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks everyone for that. I also want to thank Dr. Mark Holliday for his service to the council. Again, he was our longest serving SSC member, and certainly we're going to miss him. And I want to thank all the current SSC members for their service to the council. They do a lot of hard work for us, and I just wanted to say that. So this is the executive director's report. If you noticed in the briefing book, we switched out the format. It's more of a newsletter format. So Mary and I had some conversations about the executive director report and the fact that it was kind of stale, even though it had nothing to do with me. And we probably had been doing things the same way for, I don't know, a couple decades. So we decided that it was time for a switch out, and she had an idea about making it more like a newsletter. So hopefully the format works. Again, we're always open to ideas and changes. So if things don't look good, or if you don't like this new format, certainly let us know. Behind the tab is the usual list of council meeting topics and council meeting planning. The first attachment is the updated list That updated list includes some things that you'll notice have been either highlighted or not highlighted, scratched out, indicating that we had to move them to future meetings. Here's a long list of things that we're going to be doing in Duck, North Carolina. We thought the October meeting was going to be easy, not so much. If you look at what we have there, one of the things that we've already talked about this week is the 2027 implementation plan. So we'll meet for a couple hours with the executive committee to go over staff recommendations on that. There's the Rick C. Savage Award nominations that we'll also do in closed session with the executive committee. And then a whole host of other things. You can go down the list and look at specifications and those kinds of things. I can't remember who mentioned it, but we are going to be looking at, it was Mike Wilberg. We're going to be looking at SCUP GRAs. So we will be getting a final report on that and deciding how to proceed. The December meeting is also a full meeting. That's a meeting that we typically have with the commission. And you can see there that, in fact, we are going to be meeting with the commission to look at some things. The other thing to note is that, next slide, Mary. The other thing to note is that we do have our 2027 council meeting schedule set. We're working on finalizing 2028 hotels. I think we have one council meeting that we're still trying to figure out, but we're getting there. So we'll provide that to the folks, or to you folks, as soon as that's available. We continue to make progress on implementing the actions identified in our response to Executive Order 14276, which is restoring American seafood competitiveness. We will provide a status update to the executive committee in October when we meet to talk about our draft deliverables for the 2027 implementation plan. In July, we received a letter from NIMS identifying agency priorities for the Mid-Atlantic Council. That letter is behind the tab. If you haven't had a chance, you should definitely take a look at that. NIMS requested that we prioritize several actions. One was to evaluate vessel baseline restrictions in conjunction with the New England Council. We're doing that. The second was to consider joint council management for squid, mackerel, and butterfish. And the third was to deprioritize advancing our requirements for ropeless gear. The letter also urges the council to assess current fishery management plans and consider removing species that no longer require conservation and management and redesignating them as ecosystem component species. So again, all that's in the letter. And those requests will be considered during our 2027 implementation plan discussions at the October and December meetings. I'm going to stop there just to see if there's any questions or comments before we move on. Any questions, comments? Okay, not seeing any. In June, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM, issued a request for information and interest regarding possible mineral leasing areas on the outer continental shelf off Virginia. Some of you around the table have been involved in this, have had folks talk to you about this. The purpose of the RFI is to gather comments, information, indications of interest from interested parties for a potential mineral lease sale offshore the Commonwealth of Virginia. The RFI, for folks that don't know it, is one of the initial steps in the process to ensure that all interests and concerns are considered for future leasing decisions. We decided the best way to handle this was with a letter from the 3 East Coast councils. So if you take a look beyond the tab, it's attachment number 3. Mid-Atlantic, New England, and South Atlantic Fishery Management Council submitted a joint comment letter in response to the RFI, noting the importance of fisheries in that particular region. You can take a look at that when you get a chance if you haven't seen it. We also, the public is also very much aware of this. We received a public comment letter from Mark Eustace expressing his concerns about the potential for offshore mining, and that email is behind the tab. Next slide. There is nothing behind the tab, but in the except in the memo, there's no attachment regarding this. But In the memo, I reference RAPID, which is our Recreational Angler Partnership Improvement Directive. We're still trying to figure out exactly what RAPID is. It's not clear to us whether it'll involve a major redesign of recreational data collection programs or approaches in the Mid-Atlantic, or focus more on integrating regional concerns and coordinating priorities as MRIP continues to improve recreational data collection. Based on what we know, RAPID will use a series of regional workshops to help identify capabilities and needs on a regional basis for how recreational fishing data can be collected and consistent recreational catch estimates can be produced. They are just in the initial stages of planning for those workshops. Jason Didden is going to be our primary council point of contact for that activity. I appointed him to serve on the steering committee for the workshops. And certainly if folks have any concerns or questions, you can either contact me or Jason about that. And as we continue to figure out what RAPID is exactly, we'll let you know as well. Questions?
No,
Joe?
yeah, just if just one more thing to add. So they, so NOAA is working kind of through ASMFC to set up the planning part of the workshops. It was kind of decided on to use the council boundaries as the set for the planning group. So New York through North Carolina have representation, and we've chosen. There's going to be 3 state reps. There's going to be the federal reps from Science Center and Garfo, and so actually I think those will be coming up pretty soon. And I just wanted to add that right now we're using that regional council structure. We don't, in the planning phase, we don't know that that's what would work for what the discussions are on RAPID. My immediate concern, Jim, we were kind of hinting at this last night, but New York and Connecticut can't necessarily go without having discussions on smaller surveys. I also see Jason Din's hand. So Jason, did you have something to add as well?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to add that Alex Johnson is on the call. He's on the steering committee. So we've got, if folks do have questions, Alex is online to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, next item behind the tab involves longfin squid, and specifically the longfin squid assessment. So the item behind the tab is actually a request from Katie Almeida of American Seafood Partners, asking consideration for a second squid summit that would serve to inform industry about the results of the recent longfin squid assessment work. Remember that a research track assessment will be peer reviewed in August, and in the fall, the SSC will recommend in 2027 to 2029 ABC for longfin squid. So a lot of interest in longfin squid. The stock assessment industry involvement has gone extremely well. We're very happy with where we're at. We certainly think that a follow-up virtual meeting that brings these folks back together is a great idea. The reason that we think it's a great idea is that it extends the engagement cycle, right? It certainly brings these folks back to let them know how their input was actually used in the assessment. So we talk about the importance of the industry being involved in these assessments and have all these meetings. This gives us an opportunity to do that. I don't think we would call it a summit. I think it would be just a meeting that would allow virtual participation of the industry participants to certainly hear about the assessment, ask questions, and again, hear how their input actually impacted what we got. So if that sounds good to you, I'll work with staff and leadership to, and whoever the new chair of the Squid Mackerel Butterfish Committee is, to set that up. So any questions or comments about that?
Okay, I have from the public, from Jeff Kalen.
Jeff Kalen?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Council. Sorry I couldn't be there. Lots of things going on. Otherwise, yeah, I agree with what I just heard you say, Chris, that a meeting might be a good idea. The last summit was paid for by a $40,000 grant from SEMFISH, if we all remember that. And I spent the 4 days at the peer review on Lalago, and the outcomes were excellent. We certainly don't have time for a summit between now and the RTA, but a meeting sometime after that winds down, I suppose, could be valuable. But Manderson was talking with me in Woods Hole about doing another full-blown summit to actually get people in the room and so forth. So that idea is out there, and the potential to fund something like that through SEMFISH is there also. We're the only squid producers that are members of the Science Center for Marine Fisheries. Katie's outfit dropped out a couple of years ago. So, a webinar meeting might make sense at this juncture for people who don't really know the technical details of what happened at the peer review, but a full-blown summit might be something we want to think about a little further down the road. Based on kind of John's ideas. So I just wanted to comment that way on this one. I'll hold my comments on joint management with the New England Council until the October meeting, and I will be there. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Other comments or questions? Okay, next slide. Moving on, there's an attachment regarding Inflation Reduction Act projects, IRA projects. We continue to make progress on those. Remember, we have 8 different projects that are detailed in the attachment. You can go to our website and look at the attachments that are associated with each one of those projects if you're interested. I'm not gonna go through those. Next, like usual, there is a newsletter behind the tab that Hayden puts together for us on protected resources. A couple items to note. First, in terms of ropeless gear request for information, NOAA is seeking information from fishery participants and others with specialized knowledge on the potential voluntary use of ropeless fishing gear. Responses to that RFI are due October 14th. Also, the Atlantic Large Whale Take Reduction Team is tentatively scheduled to meet December 1 to 3 to develop recommendations for reducing right whale entanglement risk in fixed gear fisheries. Also, a summer webinar series on demand gear and large whales is underway to prepare for that particular meeting. You can look at other things in the newsletter. That's attachment 7. Next slide. Yeah. I'll stop here. Joe.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick question. Seeing the ropeless gear request for information here, but a couple previous slides back, there was a listing of deprioritizing that focus from the directives. So is there a disconnect here?
Maybe. So we have not had any formal decisions regarding this particular action. These are the things that are still scheduled. We're going to continue to move forward until we're told differently. Perhaps Garfo has something else to say about that, but that's where we're at least from my perspective. Mike?
Sure, I was going to mention this during my report in a few minutes. But if you recall that when the councils were reviewing the draft framework adjustment on alternative gear marking, that would allow the voluntary use of ropeless on-demand fishing gear, and potentially allow that in different places. We got a lot of feedback from this council, New England Council, Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, the industry, that they had a lot of questions that we weren't able to answer in terms of the technology, how the data would be used, how the information regarding, locating the on-demand or ropeless gear would be available to other vessels, other members of the industry that aren't using fixed gear, the mobile gear fleet, for example. And so there was so we acknowledged that there was a lot of information still, we didn't have. So we suggested that we do a request for information to gather input from the industry on their needs, thoughts, perspectives, but also from the on the technological side, like what are some of the data standards? How would the people that are housing the data, how would that be housed? How would that be conveyed to chart plotters and things like that? So we began working on the request for information basically at the request of the two councils and the commission and industry. It took us a while to get that published, but as Chris said, it's now on the street. There's a long list of questions if you read through it. We don't expect everybody to answer every question. There's some that are relevant to fixed gear fishermen, some that are more relevant to mobile gear fishermen, and some questions that are more relevant to to the people on the technological side that are developing the technologies. But that request for information is out. As Chris said, the due date for comments hopefully will be mid-October. At which case we would prepare a report that we would provide to the councils and the commission. I would expect that sometime likely in the spring, given that I'm expecting to get a lot of feedback on the request for information. And then that would be information for the councils to use to decide, if and when they want to move forward with any type of gear, alternative gear marking framework to move forward. If you note that the language that Chris mentioned in the letter from the agency, it asks the councils to deprioritize requirements for ropeless. Since the councils weren't really considering requiring ropeless gear, there is a little bit of a disconnect in terms of the wording in the letter versus what the councils had been considering. But certainly, what I would expect, and the way I'm interpreting this is, given all the other things that the agency is asking this council, and particularly New England Council, to focus on in 2027. That the alternative gear marking framework action probably should not be one of the main priorities for 2027. That doesn't mean that the councils wouldn't pick it back up in 2028 once they've made progress on the other actions requested in the letter. And I've had a chance to fully digest the report that we'll be providing sometime next year. The other thing at play, of course, is the work of the expected work of the Atlantic Large Well Take Reduction Team, where if they meet as planned in December and March, we'll be putting together a range of alternatives and ideas for how the industry and how we might mitigate some additional risk to right whales from fishing activity. And so the work and the suggested alternatives that the Take Reduction Team may be preparing, I think would also help inform what's needed in terms of the gear marking framework. And so, the outcome of the Take Reduction Team work, the outcome of our report on the request for information, I think would both be important for the councils to consider whether or not to restart that gear marking framework action, likely in 2028.
Thank you, Mike, for that. Other questions or comments before we move on? Okay. Next item behind the tab is the offshore wind updates. It's a summary that Julia provides to us at every council meeting. There's a number of items listed in Julia's memo, but there are a couple of things to note. There were recent announcements from the Department of Interior and 3 wind developers that 8 additional wind leases will be relinquished, with the federal government reimbursing the companies for the amounts they paid to obtain the leases in exchange for commitments to invest that same amount in other energy projects in the U.S., including oil, gas, natural gas, and geothermal projects. With those latest announcements, a total of 8 wind leases off the East Coast and 12 in total across the country are to be relinquished. All of those leases were for projects in the very early planning stages, They had not been approved for construction. As you might expect, several states are suing to challenge those agreements. Another item to note, VIMS is conducting an online survey related to impacts of offshore wind on shoreside fishing businesses and consideration for compensation. If anyone's interested in the survey, you can see the link that's in the supplemental wind memo that's in the attachment to the executive director or the executive director's report. There's also information in the main briefing material about a recently announced navigation enhancement and training program associated with the Empire Wind Project. There is a team that's continuing to work on the regional approach to fisheries compensatory mitigation for future wind projects. They continue to make progress on a draft framework document. They expect the draft document to be available for public comment, including a public webinar, hopefully in the near future. In fact, we anticipate having someone from the team come to our October council meeting to give a report. So we'll look forward to that. One of the things that that's kind of interesting, you may begin to hear more references to the Marine Minerals Administration, as BOEM has now been combined with BSEE, BSEE, which is the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. And that's under an umbrella agency of the Marine Minerals Administration. So this was how things were structured back in 2011. So as things ramp up potentially off the coast of Virginia and other places, we'll hear more about BSEE. Like usual, there's a list of projects that are operational under construction. Links to those and that information can be found in the update that Julia provided. Next. Again, like usual, attachments 9 and 10 in the briefing book deal with council actions under development or actions in the rulemaking process. Those, again, I say it every time, good reference documents to remind folks where we are with a number of actions and specifications. We discussed a couple of them this week, and I'm not going to spend any time now going through those documents, but certainly take a look. If you see anything in there that you have a question about, certainly ask me. Next item. There's the status of council actions under review. Next item. There are several supplemental materials attached to my report. The first is a letter. This letter is in response to BOEM's July 26th request for information regarding the potential use of submerged lands and existing offshore facilities on the outer continental shelf for space launch related activities, including the siting and operation of offshore space launch platforms and potential identification of reentry sites on the outer continental shelf. The RFI is intended to inform BOEM's understanding of technical, environmental, operational, legal, regulatory, and interagency considerations associated with such activities. The three councils decided the best way to handle this was through a joint comment letter. That joint comment letter was submitted on in August this month, August 3rd. And the comments focus on avoiding and minimizing impacts to sensitive habitats and important fishing areas, all of which are detailed in, I think it's a 6 or 8 page letter. So if you haven't seen that, definitely take a look at that. Next. This is something that we usually don't do, which is talk about our letters in response to EFPs. So we provide comments, staff develops comments on exempted fishing permits or EFPs, but I rarely highlight them during the executive director's report. But for a number of reasons, this proposed EFP related to dogfish has generated a little more attention than typical. So I wanted to note our comment to that particular EFP in the executive director's report, so you can take a look at it. Basically, the EFP, the proposal would allow vessels with an accepted permit to land a weekly aggregate of 500 pounds of dogfish in a few northern states. And that would be only for September through December of this year. Given that landings would still be limited to the annual quota and that the exemption is only for a few months in 2026, Our comment letter says we're not opposed to this exemption as it doesn't seem like it would negatively impact stock status of the overall management program. However, the letter does note that if there is a future desire to expand this exemption in scope or make longer term changes through specifications, the council may have a different opinion. So we do put that note in there. Any changes through specifications, if desired, would occur through a separate future process. So there's that. Next. So this is, well, let me actually go back, Mary. Go back one slide for Stephen. Any comments on this? Any questions about this? Okay. Next. So we have
Wait,
been.
sorry, we do have a hand. Lori just put her hand up.
Who?
Lori.
Oh, Lori.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry. I apologize because I didn't get to read the letter on that EFP. Is that a current fishery or is that a new fishery that wants to participate in that way? Are they, I mean, they must be current. Is it a directed dogfish fishery proposal or is it a bycatch proposal in other fisheries?
No. What's that?
It's directed.
Yeah, no. Yeah, Lori, our understanding is directed to current participants.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Other questions? Okay. The next item behind the tab is a RFP that we put out recently, looking for someone to provide some excellent photos for us to use and everything communication-wise for the Mid-Atlantic Council. So remember, we had a photo contest for our 50th anniversary. We got about 120 or 140 photos, some of them very good, but we didn't get enough. So we're considering this approach, and I've actually had some conversations with council members. Jake and I had a good conversation about this. We have some ideas in terms of how we can actually get some really good photos. One of the things that Jake reminded me is that commercial fishermen not only know how to fish, but they also know how to take pictures. So, we may engage with some of the fishermen directly. It might be one approach. Certainly looking forward to seeing what we get for in response to this RFP. The details are in the attachment. Proposals are due by September 10th. So if you know anyone that might be interested, photographers that can take excellent photos of anything related to subjects associated with the Mid-Atlantic Council, people, locations, fish, fishing gear, all that stuff. It would be, definitely have them submit a proposal to us. Okay. I think, is there anything else? That's it. So thank you.
I had a
Yeah, go ahead. Questions?
So it's not on the RFP, but on the kind of what Jake was talking about. So I think for the survey work as well, DEP, New Jersey DEP has, or Fortunate Within Fish and Wildlife has a professional staff that helps us make pictures and videos, and maybe we can send in some survey stuff too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're open to ideas. We've struggled for decades to get good photos, and occasionally we'll have council members send in their portfolio, and we use those, and a number of them have been used, but we just have a lack of really good photos that would help us with anything related to communication and outreach. So any ideas that folks have, Jake is going to have a conversation with Mary and about his idea. Certainly, if folks around the table have any other ideas, reach out to me or Mary and see what we can do. Other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. We'll move on to the organization reports, and as always, we'll start with Garfo. So Mike, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few items to share. For those of you who've been following along with the work of the New England Council and particularly related to the groundfish fishery, on June 30th, we published the long-awaited final rule implementing Amendment 25 to the Northeast Multi-Species FMP. This is the rule that sets up 4 stocks of cod, changing from the prior 2 biological stock units for cod. Sets size determination criteria, new specifications, commercial and recreational management measures for these 4 new cod stocks. Everything was in as recommended by the council. And it also sets up the final rule measures for recreational fisheries management for those stocks of cod. On August 4th, we've published also eagerly awaited interim final rule for Framework 72 for groundfish, which implements the catch limits for most of the multi-species stocks in that fishery, revises the process for setting recreational fishing measures for cod and haddock. It's an interim final rule, so it's effective now, but there is a comment period that closes September 3rd. And then one more item related to the New England Council before we move on to a couple items more relevant to Mid-Atlantic Council. But also on August 4th, we approved the New England Council's Omnibus Management Flexibility Amendment, which was an action that the New England Council put together to give themselves and the agency some more flexibility in terms of how we manage the fisheries. It basically provides for more in-season adjustment authority, but also changes how specifications and framework adjustments can be developed, extending the time period for specifications and providing more flexibility, given that's in the title, for how they respond to changes in the fisheries and the stocks. So the final rule for that is not out yet, but the overall amendment has been approved. Moving on to a couple of Mid-Atlantic relevant items. On July 9th, we published a final rule implementing the 2026 specifications under the mackerel, squid, butterfish FMP. Specifically, this action set new 2026 and projected 2027, 2028 specs for chub mackerel and ilex, and then reaffirmed previously projected 2026 specs for longfin squid and the butterfish fisheries. So that rule took effect on Monday, and so we have the specs formally adopted. And then the last item, on August 5th, we announced the 2026 cost recovery cage tag fees for the surf clam and ocean quahog ITQ cost recovery program. So the cage tag fees will be $2.19 per surf clam tag and $1.20 per ocean quahog tag. Bills will be issued in early 2027 based on these fees and the number of tags used throughout 2026. Bills for 2025 were issued on May 15th and payment was due by June 14th. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Questions, Rich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mike. Last week the commission approved a minor modification to the lobster closed season in the LCMA 5, basically to allow fish pots to fish a little bit earlier during lobster closure. Could you let us know what the timeline is on that? Thank you.
So we don't have a timeline specific yet, but typically we get a letter from the commission, that we expect relatively quickly, asking us to take that action consistent with the board's recommendations, and then we will evaluate sort of staffing and timelines for pursuing that rulemaking. I don't know if Jay it's part of Jay's team, so Jay may have more thoughts on that.
I actually don't have anything to add, Rich, but we'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just wondering if you think it'll be possible it'll be in place by next season. It pertains to March.
Yeah,
March
that's highly, like March 2027, basically highly unlikely. With one of the nuances or factors related to commission actions and recommendations to the agency for action is all of the background analytical work, the NEPA documents, the economic analysis, all of that has to be done in-house. And so, we have to find the resources to put all that work together before we can even initiate the rulemaking. So it would, as you probably are aware, those that follow lobster process, going from a commission decision and a request to the agency and getting actual rules in place does take quite a bit longer typically for lobster actions than it does for a council action, where a lot of the pre-work, the analytical work is done in-house by the council staff. So we're focused more on the rulemaking aspects.
Yeah, and I'll just add for folks that weren't tracking that, although that was something that came up at the lobster board, the direct tie-in here is that for mid-Atlantic states, we're really looking at our black sea bass fishery and the pots that are out and when they're allowed to be put out. Okay, I don't. Any other questions for Mike? Not seeing any. Thanks, Mike. We'll move on to the Science Center report. Nicole, when you're ready.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Nicole Cabana. I'm the acting director at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. I said that the other day, and I think a lot of you were asking questions about that, so I'll address that first off. John Hare, our normal director, is on detail at Fisheries Headquarters. He's currently the acting director of the Science and Technology Office, and that office supports Evan Howell, who's our new Deputy Assistant Administrator for Scientific Programs, and that office also supports science centers across the country. So John's working to improve the flow and utility of that part of the Fisheries Headquarters office. It is short-term, it's a 90-day detail, so John will be back in October. And also, for those of you who don't know, my normal role is the Deputy Director of the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. I've been in this seat in the Deputy Director role for 6 years. And prior to that, I was a NOAA Corps officer for 20 years. I also want to mention that I've been here this week with Andy Lipsky, who I believe John Hare introduced at the last meeting. Andy's also on a detail at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center with the directorate, and he will continue to have a role for the Northeast Fisheries Science Center on council prep and industry relationships going forward. So I'll start my updates with surveys. Our fall bottom trawl survey is on track to begin in September on board the Bigelow. As was mentioned several times this week, we did effectively sail the bottom trawl survey on Pisces in the spring. And when Bigelow goes into its midlife refit, Pisces will be used, and that will begin in the fall of 2027. So we're still a ways out, but wanted to remind everyone of that plan. We currently have the Bigelow underway doing a joint ecosystem monitoring and deep sea coral survey. That survey departed 2 days late. It departed August 8th. They have been working in the Gulf of Maine until this morning. The vessel's currently headed back to Newport, Rhode Island due to a radar issue. And the CO is hoping to get the vessel back underway on Monday, the 17th. Following that, we are doing a cruise on the Pisces in September to use an ROV to look at deep sea coral habitats in the Gulf of Maine. And this is part of our recurring cyclical deep sea coral habitat cruise and efforts that happen every 5 years or so. Our scallop dredge survey aboard the FV Celia was completed at the end of June. That was a fully successful survey. We also had fully successful HabCam and LRAV surveys for scallops this year. So all of our scallop work was fully successful. We actually got bonus track lines completed for the HabCam survey in the Mid-Atlantic. We also had a successful Slope Sea Atlantic bluefin tuna larval sampling cruise, and that was aboard the research vessel Sharp. It completed on July 1st. The lab work is underway to get the final count of the bluefin larvae, and the preliminary results are very encouraging. This will also support close kin mark recapture work at the Southeast Fisheries Science Center. This work underpins our long-term ICAT efforts, and we're happy to be collaborating with the Southeast Fisheries Science Center as well. I also want to mention our survey mitigation program. We continue coordinating with BOEM on survey mitigation agreements and plans. I think, as was also said, BOEM is transitioning to their new name, the Marine Minerals Administration, and all currently completed or under construction wind projects do have various requirements to mitigate the impacts on NOAA fisheries surveys. So we're working through that. Next, I want to highlight cooperative research and industry collaborations. We're very pleased with the work we've been doing on mackerel. We have a new webpage that Dr. Moore shared out to all of you, everyone who gets the council mailings last week. We've had over 20 vessels contributing over 3,000 mackerel for biological sampling since March. And we'll be ramping up our acoustic detection research this fall. We're very happy to be supporting this work and advancing new sampling technologies and industry collaboration. And I think this is furthering the successes that we've already had with squid. Our industry-based bottom trawl survey is also something that you've heard a lot about this week. For phase 2, we will be focusing on operational feasibility on multiple vessels and across a wider geographic area. The pilot survey will have 2 vessels, one in the Gulf of Maine and one in the Mid-Atlantic or Southern New England, in partnership with 2 fishing vessels. And this work is a top priority for the center and working with NTAP to make this a successful collaboration. I also want to highlight another topic that has been talked about today, which is the ILEX research. And I'll talk more about that with our longfin squid research track in a moment. But our ILEX oceanography research completed its final year of sampling in partnership with the FV Dryston in June. We sampled from Norfolk Canyon to Lindenthal Canyon, and we saw high abundance of large ILEX across the canyons. Planning is underway for a 2027 Northeast Cooperative Research Summit. Its target date is March 24th, 2027, and we'll plan to have it in the Gloucester area. We'll be sharing more information as we firm that up. For our observer program, I wanted to highlight the work we've done for the biological port sampling program this year. I know KB McCardle presented at the last meeting on this. The Northeast Fisheries Science Center took ownership of this program in October. So this is our first year running it. Overall, I feel it's been an excellent transition. We're using historical port samplers, and we're augmenting with new samplers that are observers cross-trained to collect the port samples as well. We've collected close to 44,000 lengths and 14,000 ages, and this is more than have been collected in past years. We expect to continue to expand and grow the program in out years, and we attribute the success to a good amount of outreach that's been completed since we took over. I also wanted to mention the standardized bycatch reporting methodology review is underway. Brant McAfee is leading the FMAT PDT, which is the Fishery Management Action Team, Plan Development Team. And both councils and the ASMFC and the center work together on this review. Council members have been identified and the work will begin shortly. So now I'll move on to stock assessments and council deliverables. The longfin squid research track was completed last week. That's what we heard a lot about earlier. Both of the assessment models were successfully peer reviewed and are expected to be suitable for management use. We had strong industry engagement, and industry provided important data to the model. This is another thing that we, are proud to be, showing this collaboration with industry, building trust and hopefully improving understanding of a stock that may help increase success of fisheries in our region. We do have a longfin inshore squid management track assessment scheduled for October as well. Lastly, I want to touch on regional initiatives and ecosystem-based fisheries management. The RAPID initiative that Chris mentioned earlier is transitioning recreational catch data collection into closer partnership with state agencies. John Hare is continuing to lead on this and serving as NIMS representative on the planning team. And we're expecting updated MRIP data in later this month that will be incorporated into 2027 management track assessments. We're also working with this council to ensure that the risk assessment is fully integrated with the state of the ecosystem and ecosystem and socioeconomic profiles to support SSC and council decision-making. And lastly, we're working on ecosystem and socioeconomic profiles for mackerel. We're coordinating with our MACPAC team, and we'll present a conceptual model in the spring. And we're working on scallop ESPs, and we'll present something at the fall management track stock assessment on that. And that's all I have. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, questions on the Science Center report? Rich?
Sorry, is this a stupid question? What's ESP for the scallop ESP?
Ecosystem and socioeconomic
Okay,
profile.
gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. And certainly encouraging to hear that that transition is helping bring back the port sampling to a level that was former and worked for several years trying to get it back. Very glad to see that that's being successfully moved forward. Caleb, I think, oh no, John. So we're going to go to General Counsel. John, I see you online. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. I only have a few updates for this meeting. The first one is the Conservation Law Foundation v. Trump case. On May 4th, Conservation Law Foundation, Natural Resources Defense Council, and the Center for Biological Diversity filed a complaint in the District of Columbia challenging the president's proclamation that rescinded the commercial fishing ban in the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument, and also the NIMS rulemaking that removed the commercial fishing prohibition from the NIMS regulations. On July 13th, the federal defendants filed a motion to dismiss the case for lack of jurisdiction based on standing, and that motion is currently being briefed. And the other update I have is the New England Fishermen's Stewardship Association case. I've been reporting on this case at recent meetings. This is a challenge to the New England Council's Groundfish Framework 65, and it was filed in the district court for the District of Maine. And this is a challenge alleging that the council system violates the Constitution's appointments clause. This is very similar to the Lofstad case that we had that went up to the Third Circuit about our council. So very similar legal arguments made in both cases. And on December 30th, the district court issued a decision on the parties' cross motions for summary judgment with a ruling that was very similar to the Third Circuit's decision in Lofstad. Like Lofstad, the district court in Maine found that two provisions of Magnuson-Stevens Act that would provide the councils with the ability to prevent the Secretary of Commerce from acting without council approval would run afoul of the appointments clause. And like the Lofstad case, the Maine court for remedy severed these provisions from the statute, and by doing so concluded that the councils would no longer have significant authority that raised appointments clause concerns. And the provisions that the Maine case addressed were 304C3, which would require council approval for the secretary to pursue limited access programs, and 304H, which would require a 3/4 council approval for the secretary to repeal or revoke an FMP. On April 30th, the First Circuit ruled in favor of NIMS, finding that because the injuries that the plaintiffs claimed were a result of the NIMS rulemaking and not the council's recommendation, the plaintiffs couldn't satisfy the requirements for standing to bring their challenge. The court therefore reversed the district court's ruling that had vacated those two provisions of Magnuson. At our last meeting, I reported that the plaintiffs had filed a petition for en banc review in the First Circuit. En banc review is asking all the judges in the First Circuit to reconsider the decision of the three-judge panel. Typically, an appeal is heard by three judges in the courts of appeal. This request is to ask all the judges to weigh in on it. And on August 4th, the First Circuit denied the plaintiff's request. So that's the end of that case in the First Circuit. The one court left would be the Supreme Court if it goes further than this. And that's all I have to report for this meeting. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you. Questions on the general counsel report? Not seeing any questions, John, but I certainly personally would like to, I'll reach out to you to get some more information on that. So thank you. Okay. So next up is NOAA Office of Law Enforcement. We have Caleb here. Good to see you, Caleb.
Nice to see you as well, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Morning, council members. Caleb Gilbert, Compliance Liaison with the Northeast Division of NOAA Fisheries Office of Law Enforcement. A couple details to share with the council today. First, I'll cover a little of our trade enforcement work since the last meeting. So far in FY 2026, OLE in the Northeast Division has conducted a total of 81 trade monitoring patrols or operations. So that's going back to April 1st, 2025. And we've conducted 14 new trade monitoring patrols or operations since the last council meeting in June. I think that's been sort of steady output for the last few intervals in between council meetings over the last year. Most of our current casework is trade enforcement related. One case example I can mention today involves a New York-based importer who was served a NOVA penalty last week for importing tuna without a IFTP, that's their permit, and intentionally declaring tuna under a different species code to avoid data reporting requirements and SIMP inspection, Seafood Import Monitoring Program inspection. Our patrol and operation efforts so far through the summer months have largely been split between fisheries and trade enforcement. One enforcement operation conducted earlier this year, fisheries enforcement, inside our Division 2 AOR. So that's our Mid-Atlantic AOR, worth mentioning, took place in collaboration with New Jersey Fish and Wildlife officers at night. During the operation, participating officers conducted dockside inspections of scallop vessels and clam and quahog vessels known to retain scallops as bycatch. And 21 vessels were inspected during the course of the operation, and related casework still ongoing. More recently, OLE collaborated last month in Montauk with New York State enforcement officers and U.S. Coast Guard in Operation Sushi Grade. That was conducted between July 14th and 18th. 71 underway and dockside patrols conducted during the op were in support of the Montauk Canyon Challenge HMS tournament. The primary objectives were to enforce highly migratory species regulations, conduct tournament compliance inspections, provide outreach to the fishing community, and promote voluntary compliance. And cases related to violations identified during that op are ongoing as well, since that's all relatively new. Moving on to our enforcement support of North Atlantic right whale conservation, I have second quarter FY 2026 Atlantic large whale take reduction plan patrol and compliance data. Compliance rate data to share with the council today. So between January 1st and March 31 of this year, OLE and our enforcement partners collaborated to inspect fixed gear from 149 different vessels on separate patrol days. 52 of those vessels whose gear were inspected were non-compliant with take reduction plan regulations, and that's equates to a 65% compliance rate, which is actually a drop from about 79% compliance rate that we tallied in the first quarter of FY26. As usual, Maine Marine Patrol conducted most of the vessel inspections and patrols that contributed to that data set in the second quarter. And this drop in compliance, I should just mention, shouldn't be considered in a vacuum. Investigations initiated earlier in the year often result in targeted inspections in the second quarter, resulting in a lower observed compliance rate in that quarter every winter. I think if you look back every year, there's a drop in compliance in the second quarter. NED enforcement officers and state enforcement officers from Maine Marine Patrol, as I mentioned, but also Delaware Natural Resources and Environmental Control and Maryland Natural Resources Police all contributed to 59 take reduction plan focus patrols we documented in the second quarter of FY 2026. Related to our efforts to reduce the impact of gear entanglements on North Atlantic right whales and all large whales, one new take reduction plan case I can report to the council today involves a lobster vessel charged by GCS with various related violations in the first week of July. A Division 1 agent and officer identified these violations during our first lobster management area or offshore LMA 3 patrol last summer. And then related to our efforts to enforce the speed rule side of our North Atlantic right whale conservation efforts, to help curb the incidence of ship strikes for ship strike avoidance. Last week, General Counsel Enforcement Section charged a Netherlands-based shipping vessel with a speed rule violation that occurred in December of 2024 after one of our Division 2 special agents investigated that case. Also related to our enforcement support of all large whales, Division 1 special agent recently investigated, I guess it was at the end of June was when the entanglement took place, a humpback whale entanglement within the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. The Center for Coastal Studies Marine Animal Entanglement Response Team, or MARE team, responded along with Massachusetts Environmental Police at the time, and the MARE team was able to successfully remove the fishing gear from the whale, and all gear removed from the whale was inspected to be and determined to be in compliance with take reduction plan requirements. I just randomly looked on the Center for Coastal Studies website today and learned there were 2 more entanglements, unfortunately, up off of New England this summer. So I mean, it's not really my place to report on those. We don't have any involvement unless there is a compliance issue, but hopefully I can report to the council, or someone else can, by the next meeting, that all of that gear was compliant. What I did hear was that both of the whales were released and recovered and swam away and seemingly healthy, at least according to the Center for Coastal Studies website. Moving on to our observer program support, we sent out a permit holder letter a couple of weeks ago to remind participants of their legal obligations to pay for observer coverage if they are selected and carry an industry-funded scallop observer. I mentioned our plan to send out that letter at the June council meeting, I believe. Once it went out, we received a couple inquiries from industry thinking that message was directed directly to them. I apologize for the unclear wording, but to be clear, that was a general reminder sent out to all limited access scallop permit holders. And our also related to our observer program support, our observer program liaison also attended the most recent new observer training hosted by the center, I believe, last month. And there are certainly ongoing observer related casework that we're all working on, or a number of our sworn staff are working on. Regarding a VMS related case or casework, a scallop vessel was recently charged for a Western Gulf of Maine habitat management area incursion that happened back in 2023. And I believe this was prior to the New England Fishery Management Council's provision, and I believe Framework 38 that went into effect for fishing year 2024, if I'm getting that all right. That increased the scallop vessel VMS ping rate from 30 minutes up to 5 minutes. So this was late in calendar year 2023. We placed that boat on 5-minute ping rates from 30 that were the minimum requirement at the time, and we resulted in the observed incursions into the HMA. So it's a case I thought it might be worth mentioning. I mentioned a couple recently closed cases in our report today that involved general counsel enforcement section. For better reference, Northeast Division forwarded 26 cases to general counsel enforcement section in the third quarter of FY26. So that's from April 1st through June 30th of this year. And these cases involved but are not limited to HMS violations, SIMP violations, gear violations, permanent reporting violations, and observer program violations. I can't mention any of the details. Those would I think all be ongoing open cases. And last item I'll report today relates to our blue line tilefish cases, as I always try to report out to the mid-council. There's nothing to report there. There's nothing closed that I can report today. So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Great. Thanks, Ed. Any questions on the OLE report? Okay, not seeing any. I'd like to push on through. Did someone? No? Okay, sorry. I'd like to push on. I think we'll be pretty quick. Actually, next up is typically our U.S. Coast Guard report. I don't see Josh, and I'm not sure if Coast Guard has a proxy for the Lieutenant Commander to do that report. Pause to see if anyone's online. Okay, not hearing any. I'll see how Josh wants to handle that, if he wants to get something written out to pass through to Chris. Or oh, he is. Okay.
Oh, it's under the tab.
Oh, his report is already there. Okay, sorry. Thanks, Kip. All right, there's some late breaking stuff on there. Caleb, did you have something?
Yeah, I maybe offhand informally offered to run through his report for him yesterday, but I wasn't. We never confirmed anything. At least I wasn't planning on it. But maybe that's what. Maybe there was some confusion. He thought I was going to run through his report for him.
Since it's been posted, I think since it's on the tab, it's there for everyone to take a look at. So we'll leave it at that for now. And if we have any questions, we'll have him field them at the October meeting. So thank you there. And with that, we'll move on to the liaison reports. I'll start with New England Council. Bobby?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. New England had its meeting in June 23rd to 26th in Mystic, Connecticut. There was a lot of discussion. There was very few action items. One thing they did do in response to Executive Order 14276 was to remove the IFM from the herring plan, but not the entire IFM amendment, and supported for the inclusion in the 2027 priorities list. There was a discussion on vessel baseline restrictions, presentation from the Fisheries Monitoring and Research Division. The herring stuff that came up, I'm not sure how that's going to play out, because there was committee motions to set specs for 27 through 31 as a standalone action, and that was to be approved in September. The PDT continued to work on the specs for area management measures and for the carryover provisions of unharvested catch, but this was all prior to the stock assessment peer review, so that is liable to change. We had the overview of the monkfish listening sessions, and then the motion for the harbor porpoise take reduction, which mirrored exactly what we did here. And then the scallop report, the motion was to split the framework 42's 27-28 specs areas and days at sea transfer. That was passed. For groundfish, there was a motion to submit framework 74 specs that passed, and the framework 68 ABC control rule with increased high-level reporting and discussion on risk policy. And like I said, there was a lot of discussion, not a whole lot of action items.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the New England Council report or comments? Okay, very good. For the South Atlantic Council, we do have the draft agenda behind the tab. Tom, what's that? Oh, we do have it. Sorry, Joe. I was bouncing back and forth there. Laura, you had a question?
A quick one to Bobby. On the monkfish discussion that happened at their June meeting, was there discussion about action to be taken, frameworks, amendments on the monkfish, or did you leave that meeting feeling the same way we left our meeting after the presentation and where we're at with monks?
There was no direct direction. I mean, it was basically the same, kind of the same thing we had here, but there does seem to be a need to go back and revisit the monkfish plan. There seems to be a want for that, which I agree with, because that plan is getting stale. It's been a long time since it's been revisited. There was no suggestions on what possible changes may be needed, but there is a push for a thorough review of that fisheries management plan to see if anything needs to be brought up to date, or there's newer tools in the toolbox we may be able to use, but there was nothing specific cited.
Thanks.
Jason, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just, I had a general sense that, some folks thought maybe there should be some action, but yeah, it didn't seem likely that they were going to spin anything up this year. And given their priorities, I'm not sure that I would expect anything next year, although they are just kind of, just starting their prioritization process now.
Okay, thank you. Ted, did you have something?
Yeah, I'll just briefly add that there was a statement that we would not do any management action on monk until 28, since that is when specs are going forward. And there were a number of members who did not think that was a prudent course of action, but there wasn't a lot of extensive discussion on it. It was put out there, kind of received at the table, and that was it.
Rich.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Could Bobby or Ted discuss a little bit about, or explain to us a little bit about this risk policy that was approved at the council by the New England Council, using the weightings and how it's going to be used for fish stocks? Thanks.
No offense, Ted. All I know about it is I got a T-shirt with a Z-score on it and a stress ball. The rest of it is up to you. So,
Brandon, are you listening?
Yeah, I think you asked the two incorrect people for that. I was the lone abstention on that vote. I think there's better people to ask for an explanation on that, where you feel it's going.
All right. Well, thank you, Rich. We'll get you some info there. So on to the South Atlantic, as I mentioned. Jason, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say we can, try to get I've been tracking some of it. Brandon has been too. We can get some summary materials out. And in general, it's, it's kind of like applying what ours does, but to other factors. And, the other factors are kind of nudging you towards or away from a riskier 50%, coin flip probability of overfishing that the OFL entails. And so they are starting to work through these scoring processes. They kind of set a council-wide weightings of kind of which are more or less important. And then they're working through those for all their species starting this year to kind of inform the ACLs next year. So we can definitely get some overview materials out to the councils that kind of explain in whatever detail folks want of like exactly how that process is playing out.
I'm gun shy. Maybe fourth time's the charm to move on the South Atlantic Council here. So we do have the draft September agenda. I don't know, Tom, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to highlight a couple things here real quick because obviously we haven't met since your last meeting, and we will be meeting September 4th through 18th in Charleston, South Carolina. The two things I'll just bring your attention to is we will be going over a report from our joint subcommittee here with the Mid-Atlantic on blue line tilefish. And the second order item, which might be of interest to some of the Mid-Atlantic here, is we will be convening our mackerel cobia AP, which is Spanish and king mackerel, this November. I believe that's the 2nd and 3rd. And that is in advance of the council considering moving forward with an amendment that's looking at two specific items. The first being changing the fishing season date for Spanish mackerel, and the second being some issues with king mackerel tournament landings. The changing the fishing date is a way that we're looking to address some of the allocation between the southern zone, which is South Carolina to Florida, and the northern zone, which is North Carolina north. And so hopefully in addressing that date, we can address some of the allocation issues between the regions without having to do state-by-state transfers or taking up a full comprehensive amendment without a stock assessment at this time. So.
All right, I appreciate that. Are there any questions on that report? Okay. Not seeing any. That brings us to other business and public comment. There is one item on the tab there from John T. Everett regarding hydraulic dredging, benthic productivity, and managed access to closed areas. So folks had a chance to look at that. I don't know that we have any public comment on that, but I will look for hands for any other business or public comment. Okay, Deirdre, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning. Sound good.
Great, thanks. My name is Deirdre Bulke. I'm an independent consultant supporting engagement activities related to the development of the Regional Fisheries Compensation Program for offshore wind, also known as the Regional Fund Administrator, or RFA. Chris already did mention this during the executive director's report, during the offshore wind update segment of his report earlier this morning. I just wanted to take a minute or two to add a few more additional details here. The Mid-Atlantic Council has already received periodic updates on this effort. Most recently, last October in Philadelphia, my colleagues Olivia Burke, Jan Matheson were at the council meeting. So today I want to just briefly summarize where the project stands since then and what you can expect in the coming months. And I did give a brief update to the policy board at the commission meeting last week and a similar short public comment to this at the last New England Council meeting. So I do apologize for being repetitive for some of you that have sat through this already. But very briefly, the 11 states from Maine through North Carolina are participating in this collaborative effort. The work is being led by Brown Greer, which is a Virginia-based claims resolution firm, as well as Carbon Trust, a not-for-profit consultancy agency, with guidance from a design oversight committee, or DOC, which really is the core group advising this effort, made up of commercial fishermen, fishing representatives, developers, and state employees. There's also a for-hire recreational fishermen advisory group as well, called the FHC. And all of these advice and participation has been involved in this process. It has been going on for about a year and a half, and as we move into the final phase of the project, expected to be complete by the end of this calendar year, public engagement is definitely increasingly important. Later this summer, just wanted to emphasize that the team is expecting to release a draft compensation framework that Chris mentioned earlier, and there will be a formal public comment period. And there will be a webinar that will be broadcast online and folks invited to join. And this council, as Chris also mentioned, is scheduled to receive a presentation on that draft at your meeting in October. So if all stays on course, we look forward to reviewing that draft with you in more detail during your agenda in October. And all of this will be posted. We'll share an email with staff to let folks know when it is available online. The website is rfainfo.com. And thanks again for this opportunity to give you a brief comment today, and definitely look forward to a more detailed discussion in October. But please reach out. We hope to meet with folks, as the draft is out in the public in September and October to get more input on this effort. Appreciate your time very much. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And I'm sure Chris will get that out just as more than anything as a reminder on the public comment timeframe. And we look forward to that October presentation. See one other hand, and that's James Fletcher. Go ahead, Jim.
Question for Ms. Brokey. Why not just cut the power bill in half of any commercial fisherman holding a federal operator's license? Jesus Christ can't apply the way y'all have this thing written up unless he had 4 lawyers from Philadelphia and 3 out of D.C. Why not just KISS? Make it simple, stupid. If you have a federal commercial operator's license, you get 50% off of your power bill. Why can't that be the compensation? Thank you for your time. I'm frustrated because I looked at it and I'd be darned if I could figure out how y'all have it. You must have some of the best lawyers writing the fine print that there is. But my question to you directly and to the compensation fund is why, if a person has a federal operator's permit, he cannot just simply fill out and get 50% off of his utility bill. And the same thing for any company dealing in seafood. Thank you for your time, and I'd like a response.
Can I respond, Chair? Is that what you'd like me to do?
If you want to try and
Sure.
tackle it, Deirdre, I know in the early days of the RFA, since I was part of the DOC in the early days, I know Jim asked me that question, and I think I think the easiest answer is the group went in a different direction for a framework that might work for a lot of different applications with but please feel free to give it a shot if you'd like to.
Sure. Hi, Jim. It's great to hear from you. I'm not sure which draft you're referring to that you read. I'd love to talk to you more about it. I'm thinking it might be because the draft hasn't been released yet for this regional effort, which again is in response to some concerns that have been raised that there have been so far, yes, complex, detailed processes that haven't worked as well as people would like. So this draft hasn't been released yet. In terms of what you might be reviewing, it could be one of the previous programs, maybe the CVAL project or something like that, but I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline. So when this is released, it too will be detailed and long, and we hope through presentations through the council and things like that, we can help simplify what some of those details are. But at the end of the day, these are complicated claims processes there is definitely an interest to try to make them more consistent moving forward and more transparent. So it hopefully is a little easier to digest than some of the ones to date haven't been as known in the beginning of the process. So that is definitely a hope and plan for this release. But again, just to be clear, this is for future projects. It wouldn't affect any of the other projects that are already in development and already implemented. In terms of your specific idea, it's very creative as usual with a lot of your ideas. I do think there could be a place for something like that through some of the community and resiliency funds that have been discussed that don't have to be as specifically tied to a project area per se and could be more general. So certainly, keep sharing those thoughts. I could see some challenges, with that exact idea, but there's certainly room, in addition to the compensation program that's a more direct vessel by vessel or shoreside business by shoreside business approach, where some of those kind of more community-wide ideas could be explored. Hopefully that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great answer. I appreciate that. Any other hands for public comment? Okay, not seeing any. So that concludes our agenda. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to staff, as always, and thank you to council and the public for the engagement and the participation this week. And we will adjourn. See you folks in dock. Drive safe.